So today I'm going to make a huge batch of one of our favourite recipes at Square Food Foundation, our healthy and delicious tomato sauce, which can be the foundation of many different things: tomato soup, tomato sauces, bases of a ragu or a bolognese. So a really useful one to know how to do. So I'm just going to show you how to prepare it. So the main ingredients of the healthy and delicious tomato soup are what we call the Holy Trinity. So we've got onion, carrot and celery. And then in addition to the carrots, onion and celery, we have the rest of these ingredients. So some bay leaves, which are these ones just here. We've got some garlic, some tomato puree, some chopped tomatoes and some balsamic vinegar. And we're going to cook this down really nice and slowly so that it develops a really beautiful flavour, and the longer you can cook it, really, the better it will taste. I'm just going to show you or demonstrate how we cut an onion at Square Food Foundation. So first of all is this sort of classic bridge grip. So we're going to hold the onion nice and firmly, put quite a big blade through the tunnel of the bridge and then just press down nice and firmly. So you've got 2 halves of onion, and then you can just take the skin off. 2 halves of onion. You can notice I've just kept the roots on, the sort of hairy end there. That's going to help us keep it nice and together, so don't chop those off, but you can take off the sort of tail end. So just using a sort of claw grip, you can just slice through, just take both of those ends off. The next stage is to do a nice sort of cut halfway up the onion. And you're going to do that with a nice sort of firm hold on the top and then sort of sawing motion. And what's going to happen is you're going to stop just before the end. So you want to kind of go about 3/4 of the way up, leaving about just a centimetre towards the end. Once you've done that, you're going to face the onion towards you again, and then still using that claw grip, you're going to use the tip of the knife and you're just going to do slices across the onion like so. And you can see I'm not going all the way through the onion, I'm just going again 3/4 of the way. Once you've done that, it's very easy then to sort of do a nice chop, again using your knuckles as a guide. That's going to help protect them. You can then chop it through nice and carefully. Oil in the bottom of the pan. I'm making a really big batch of this, so I've just been quite generous. We might want to add a little bit more later. And then into that I'm going to put the onions. So I'm just putting the onions in, you can hear that lovely sizzle. That's what we want. So that's simmering away nicely. And we're going to just drop the temperature down now that it's sizzling. Give it a good stir. So I'm making a big batch of this because it's brilliant to freeze down. So whilst I'm going through the trouble of sort of chopping everything up, it makes sense just to make a big batch of it. So next is the carrots. So safest way of peeling a carrot is hold on one end and then just peeling away from you all the way around. And you want to top and tail the carrots. And I always like to have a little bucket next to me while I'm working with all of the scraps, and that can go into a stock, or if you've got compost, you can put it in the compost. And then depending on how big the carrot is, I tend to just cut it in half like that, just to make it a little bit easier. And then using that bridge technique again, just cutting down the middle, and same with the second half, and then you pop it flat side down, so that's going to be the safest way of doing it. And then one at a time, we're just going to use that sort of nice claw grip just to cut into 4 strips like that. And then very simply, just gather as many as you feel comfortable with. You can then just chop into nice small pieces. The aim of this really is just to try and get the vegetables all a similar size. So the same thing with the celery, so we're just going to top and tail the celery. And again, just chop it down in half, just makes life easier, and then just use that sort of dragging motion to drag the knife through the celery. Like that. Always be careful of your thumb and little finger, because that's the little bit that tends to get cut. People forget about it. Got a nice piece of garlic here. So the best way of doing this is just to take, if you can see there's like a nice little woody end, just chop that off, and then with the big blade, you're just going to put the sharp point of the blade facing away from you and just give it a good old whack. That's going to pop off the skin really quickly. And then, once you've done that, you can just really quickly, roughly chop it. And then if you've got a little bit of salt, you can add a bit of salt to this. That's going to act like a little bit of a sandpaper. And then you're going to just use the blade to pinch the garlic until it comes into a nice paste. Looks easier than it actually is, so if you don't get this right the first time, it's absolutely fine, so just keep practicing. So always start at the bottom and then just take little pinches of the garlic as you work your way up the pile. So I've just added the garlic a little bit later than the carrots, onion and celery, just because sometimes it can burn, so I like to put it in a little bit later. The longer you leave this stage, the sweeter and more delicious it will be. So it's really important to try and leave it as long as you possibly can. So we recommend anywhere about, well, half an hour ideally, but anywhere up to sort of an hour, just to really intensify that flavour. So I'm just going to add a sprinkle of salt, and then I'm just going to leave that leave that to simmer down nicely. And you can already see how the onions are sort of softening up, and the carrots and the celery and the garlic are going to really, really become sweet and delicious. That's had about 40 minutes simmering away. Is a good old squeeze of tomato puree. And I'm going to chuck in a couple of bay leaves and give those a stir around. And then I'm going to add in another pinch of salt. If you add salt as you go, it sort of builds up the layers of flavour. You don't necessarily then end up adding too much salt. And then I like to just put in a good splash of balsamic vinegar and then the chopped tomatoes. And then as much chopped tomatoes as you put in, you also want to then put in some water because it's going to cook down for ages. So the chopped tomatoes are in, and I'm just going to tip in some water, stir in, and then we're just going to let that cook down for, well, as long as you can really leave it. So if you've got a slow cooker, it's a really good one to sort of do in the morning and then leave to simmer overnight or during the day. But I'd say anywhere between sort of 2 and 4 hours, you'll get a really sort of thick, delicious, really, really good tomato sauce. If it ever sort of starts to get really thick and it's not quite had enough time, just add a little bit more water as you go. And this is what it looks like about 3 hours later. Really reduced and lovely and full of flavour. This will be delicious, just mixed through some some pasta, or then added to some minced beef or a bolognese. But a really great one to batch cook and then freeze down.